The evolution of Sins of a Solar Empire 2 continues with version 1.5 Diplomatic Repercussions. This large and substantial update makes numerous adjustments to ensure economic gameplay is deeper, with more meaningful and interesting choices to be made at every stage of the game as your burgeoning empire spreads its wings out into the galaxy around you. Diplomacy is now easier to read and provides deeper gameplay without introducing excessive mechanical complexity, allowing more variation in the grand strategy aspect of the game and more ways to meaningfully interact with other empires. Computer opponents are stronger and play in a more entertaining and interactive way, making less tactical mistakes, are more willing to form alliances and eventually forgive past transgressions. A new quick start feature allows players to jump into a game with a more developed empire and larger fleet, skipping some of the early game build-up phase and getting to the mid-game action much faster. In essence, this update is a huge systemic improvement to core gameplay mechanics. Furthermore, we've added more accessibility options and improved the game's user interface, and expanded modding toolsets for our community to go wild with their own creativity too. The economic simulation of Sins 2 has been refined to elevate population as a critical component in generating resources. This has been achieved by rebalancing the entire economic simulation and was a serious undertaking with too many individual changes to fully list here, so we'll just talk about the main effects this has on the game. Population structures require less orbital structure slots to build, but planets no longer generate resources on their own. Instead, all on-world resource income is generated by population, and so your homeworld now starts at or near its maximum population to facilitate this, dependent on faction and game difficulty level. Research rates scale up with higher population now, and the Advent's focus track is directly tied to population too. We've made a substantial pass to various population buffs from planet items and techs to further facilitate population working as the core of your economy. Planetary and orbital mining operations have been adjusted to account for this change too. Most notably, orbital mining is far more profitable than before, and this has several intended and dramatic knock-on effects across the game. The consequence to these changes are that population, and therefore an empire's economy, becomes incredibly important owing to their increased value and relative fragility. This huge economic change ensures warfare has much greater impact in games of Sins 2 than before. Players have much finer control over the amount of force required to achieve their goals, with a much denser and varied spectrum of mission outcomes available to target with their military efforts. With orbital structures being the primary driver of a colony's economy now, destroying orbital mining and population boosting infrastructure in hit-and-run raids is far more effective than it was before. You can make a meaningful dent on an enemy's economy, and therefore their position in the game, without needing to win a decisive battle and completely take an enemy's planet away from them. This is a big win for the raid-focused Visari particularly, but all factions will greatly benefit from this change. And when you do win a decisive victory in a gravity well, bombing population on planets is far more economically devastating than it was before. Taking a colony from an enemy by force dramatically reduces its resource income potential for a lot longer than it did before the update. Consequently, trading colonies as part of a diplomatic agreement is now much more valuable and attractive, as wars are economically ruinous, and diplomatic deals in general will play a far more decisive part in your game strategy, whether you're playing with other humans or against the computer opponent. The Advent's focus resource, and therefore the frequency with which they can fire off unity abilities, is more closely tied to population, and they're better rewarded for their efforts in converting or subverting enemy worlds without killing potential converts. Visari raids are incredibly effective now, as befits their lore and intended playstyle, and the Visari Alliance particularly gain a greater effect from their various abilities that rely on controlled population and culture. As you can see, this change marks a dramatic improvement to the asymmetric playstyles of each faction, stoking the fires of the depth and drama of the grand strategic aspect of Sins of a Solar Empire 2. With the increased focus on economic and strategic gameplay depth, we've fixed and fleshed out the diplomacy system to give you better tools to interact with other players and really play with all that new potential. The diplomacy UI has been refashioned to show critical modifiers to diplomatic proposals, helping you understand why a computer opponent is making its decisions the way it is. Ideological and factional differences have greater variance and effect than before, and are fully transparent to the player. And, for the first time, you can now see how much trust or hate you've developed during the course of your relationship, and how that affects your chances of a diplomatic agreement being successfully signed. The acceptance probability updates as you add or remove assets and treaties, and this means you no longer have to guess as to how many resources you need to secure that deal you want. Now, influence is much more useful. Influence points can be traded between players as a resource in your diplomatic agreements, and can be used to purchase player intelligence on arrival, which can reveal useful insights into their progress in research, the size of their economy, and the strength of their military. To facilitate these huge system changes, assist game pacing, and to improve readability, each faction's tech trees have been rebalanced and reorganized, with many changes made across the board. You'll generally need to research less technologies to increase your tech tier now too. Your gaming time is precious. Diplomatic Repercussions provides tools to customize the pacing of your matches of Sins 2. We've added a set of quick start presets that determine the size and starting conditions of your empire at game start. Basic starts you with a light factory and nothing else, similar to the first game in the series. Normal is one you'll already be familiar with from Sins 2. For example, the TEC start with a retrofit bay, light factory, and heavy factory. Quick gives you 2 factories, a small fleet, a couple of labs, and a capital ship with a ship item. Advanced starts the game at Tech Tier 3, with many pre-researched techs, a bunch of partly developed colonies with small fleets stationed there, a medium-sized fleet located at your homeworld to get you out conquering the sector quickly, and a healthy treasury to build an economy and keep that war machine well oiled. Finally, phase travel speed can be changed in the game setup options too. We've made numerous small fixes and improvements to the computer opponent's game AI, which will now correctly prioritize target types in battle, helping them better react to specific threats like long-range missiles or carriers. It retreats in a much smarter way and no longer ping-pongs between gravity wells, and has new routines to allow it to retreat, regroup to await reinforcements, and then carry on its initial assault. We've also tweaked the AI's offensive aggression. Previously it played too conservatively and tended to turtle if it didn't feel strong enough to take you on, waiting to get a numerical advantage and often losing the initiative in a predictable way. Now, it'll act more decisively and engage more reliably, even if this risks occasionally misjudging relative fleet strengths, making the computer opponent a lot more fun to fight and play more like a real human in this respect. Even better, with the new population-focused economic changes, even thwarted raids and invasions can still benefit them if they take out critical infrastructure before they're driven off or defeated. In diplomacy, the computer opponent gets a timer to stop it spamming alliances right after breaking them, and is now far more likely to make ceasefires and alliances with the player, rather than just teaming up with other computer players. It's less likely to dump all of its influence in auctions and therefore utilises that resource a lot better. Generally speaking then, the computer opponent makes less tactical mistakes, is more assertive and less timid in engagements, and should play just a little more like a human would. We've added several colorblindness modes to our accessibility options, improved tooltips, and made numerous small changes to various UI elements to improve the readability and general user experience of the game. Finally, we've upgraded our modding tools. This includes upgrading Mod.io to SDK version 2 and adding many new features to allow modders even more access to the various game elements and systems to define their own economies, tech trees, and AI behaviors, and much more. This huge update aggregates many individual additions, bug fixes, changes, and tweaks, and we've only covered them in rather general terms here. As always, you can find a link to the full patch notes in the video description above. With increased nuance and meaningful decision making in the economic and diplomatic portions of the game, Sins of a Solar Empire 2 goes from strength to strength. A big thank you goes out to the Sins 2 community for providing feedback on these gameplay systems and helping us improve the game for you all.